while it was still fresh in my mind, I wanted to share more on my experience at the emergency room last night. During the triage process, as I was reviewing my symptoms with the nurse, she cut me off in the middle of explaining some of the new or worsening symptoms I was having. We never even made it to the 3 important questions of, do you feel safe at home? Which was asked. I also was asked if I feel like harming myself or others. But I was not asked anything about any recent falls, which I was in the middle of trying to explain to her throughout the process of explaining my symptoms and how my left side is causing me difficulty walking. They placed me in the room immediately, which was nice. I didn't have to wait long at all. The nurse came in and was very pleasant, started my IV and started it in my right arm, where I had told her I had issues in the past. In July, I had an IV that went bad and caused bruising for about 3 weeks. Immediately told her that it was hurting, and she told me to let's wait and see, because if they're going to want to do imaging, they're going to want your IV in a large vein. Knowing the difficulty care can be if you are a difficult patient or are, refusing care provided, I tried to tough it out as long as I could. Finally, causing so much panic, I stopped the first person I saw, who was the emergency room doctor, who was kind enough to remove the IV from my arm because it had started to bubble up at that point. Now, my nurse light had been on at this point, but no one had came in to check. I talked to him for a minute, briefly started explaining my symptoms again. He kind of cut me off. It's a chronic issue, I understand that. But if the pain wasn't new or worsening, or if there wasn't a concern, I would not have went to the emergency room if it was consistent. He did end up ordering a CAT scan. The nurse came in, restarted my IV, was very kind about doing so. Took me down to CAT scan. There were 2 very nice young men performing the test. On my way out, they had asked me if I had any abdominal surgeries in the last month. I explained to them I had not, that my last surgery was in June when I had the open splenectomy. I showed them the scar. They apologized to me for what I had went through and what I was going through. Of course, they wouldn't tell me anything that was going on with my report. They're not doctors. And they sent me back to my room where I waited. And the doctor came back in and told me that there were no acute findings on my CAT scan, and I was going to be released. Amazing, great. I'm so happy there's no acute findings, but I did have some specific questions about some findings that were on previous tests, such as, changes to a pancreatic cyst or fluid and particulate matter that was in my GI tract on a previous CAT scan. And none of my questions were answered. I was simply told I was not acute. And when the CAT scan report was released today, it does not seem to show anything acute, but it does show that my spleen is of normal size and enhancement. My spleen is of normal size and enhancement. Although I don't have a spleen, it's extremely concerning because that is where the pancreatic cyst was located, was on my pancreatic tail. And I also just had fluid in my stomach. So I've reached out to my providers to ask those 2 very specific questions, and hopefully we'll get a response from one of them soon. Thanks.